Hello, everybody. We're back. I'm going to remind you no nets, no edits. We're just going to start, and when we stop, we're finished, okay? Does that make sense to you? My wife off camera is laughing at me. She's going to assist me today. She's going to read the questions. You guys sent some good questions in. And, I'm trying to go through some of the old stuff too and take down the questions and have them read here, and I'll answer them for you. So you got the first question, Bev?
Yep. David Henda writes, what were the church meetings like? And decisions in making club politics.
Well, the church meetings could be very long, a lot of conflict, a lot of arguing. Not many went smooth. We were very, despite what some people think, we did not talk about criminal activity in the meetings. If you start talking about something that could get everybody in the room in trouble, it usually got shut down. And if you didn't stop, probably politely asked to leave. So the meetings, probably like any board meeting with a big corporation where a lot of things were at stake, and just very emotional. I remember going to a meeting on the East Coast one time, and we had to come back the next day. We couldn't reach any decisions. So, hope that answered it. Next one, Bev.
David Davis, 6745, this number following his name. Tell us about the young guys in Ventura.
Well, the young guys at Ventura, Georgie kind of started that whole process of bringing in the young guys. I know there's a lot of controversy about it. There are people that write that the club was very angry with me. You see stuff on the internet. That's all bullshit. If you look on my Instagram page, I think it's on Facebook as well. You've got Cisco giving the young guys high marks. But I'll tell you some stories about them. They all came from different gang factions. They were street gang members, and they all knew each other. Some of them were in conflict with each other. You had your Pierpont and your Midtown and your Avenue guys and skinhead guys and whatnot. And when they came on board with us, they had to come around. They had to have their own motorcycle. They had to do it on their own. And when they walked through that door on Fixed Way, the clubhouse, Ventura front door, they left all their problems behind them. They didn't bring anything with them. We didn't want anybody coming there that was looking for payback or whatever. But they were kind of unique, and it was interesting having a father, being a father of a child the same age as those guys. I could relate to them a lot better than a lot of the guys could. A lot of the guys that were single and kind of lived a old school outlaw existence, had trouble identifying with them, understanding them. They dressed different, they talked different, but as far as specifics, they were a lot of fun to be around. I remember going out on the west end of town with them on Friday and Saturday night, especially Saturday nights. We used to walk up into town from the clubhouse. It was very, close quarters. We had the clubhouse, then we had the bar when we'd go to Nickelby's. That was real popular. And then you had the Star Bar as well. And then up from that was the Ventura Theater, where there was a lot of different professional acts that would come there, a lot of different bands, different type of entertainment. And right around the corner from the Ventura Theater was the Ink House. That was my tattoo shop. And across the street from the Ventura Theater was the San Souci. It was kind of your typical hometown dive bar. And, we would party down there, and you never know who we were going to run into. I know Eddie Vedder, they drug Eddie Vedder to the clubhouse one night. We had a lot of fun partying with him. Mike Ness used to come down there. He'd perform at the theater and then make his way to the clubhouse, along with a lot of other performers. David Crosby would show up there if he was doing a show. But the young guys really added a lot of life to things. They created that what I call Ventura style bike. You know, I could talk about them all day long, but I think I answered the question. I'm going to move on. Next question, Bev.
Joe Thompson, 61. Do you have any advice or tips for a person no longer having fun in their club? It no longer feels like a club, it's just another job.
Well, it sounds like you may be burned out. Are you putting anything into the club? Maybe that's why you're not getting anything back. I mean, I'm not being condescending to you. I just want you to understand that it sounds to me like you're burned out, perhaps like somebody at work that's burned out. But start engaging. You know, doing things with your brothers. Pick out a couple of brothers you can identify with. If not, I think you're going to have to come to terms with the fact that that whole club life may be played out for you, and I can identify with that. I understand it, and think about it real hard before you make that move, because I'll tell you. Once you go in there and you tell them you decided to move on with your life, you're not going to be real popular. And I experienced that myself, and I speak from experience on that. Okay, Bev.
Cornbread, 8246. Why would anyone care about your finances?
Well, I don't know. That's in response to somebody wanting to know, and people all the time are writing me, "You're making money off the club." No, I'm not making money off the club. I'm making money off the stories that I experienced while I lived that club life. I also think I talk about my prison cases. That in itself has worked into a business for me. I have a consulting business. I'm hired by defense teams. I don't work for the prosecution. I work for the defense. You could complain that perhaps I should give any money I make as a consultant to the club. I mean, it's a ridiculous argument. The stories are mine. The work I do with my books is mine. I mean, I put a lot of hours into it. I got a new book coming out soon, and Beverly and I were talking about it a couple of days ago. It seems like it's just been a few months, but it's been 3 years almost. I've been working on this book, so I devote a lot of time to this stuff. I'm trying to create a historical record, and I guess I could tell you. You want to know about my finances? Ask your mom. I couldn't resist.
Bruce Leos writes, was David Burgess guilty or innocent?
Well, David Burgess was a Hell's Angel from Reno. His family owned a legal house of prostitution. It was a bordello. Always had a lot of heat on him. The whole family did. They're always going after him for taxes and whatnot. The government wanted to get that license away from him, and perhaps control the whorehouse itself. That was one of the things we speculated on. But David Burgess got caught coming out of Sturgis with, federal search with child pornography. He claimed it wasn't his, but I think in the end, the club decided that perhaps it was. And, I know some people in law enforcement that basically passed on to myself and other members that they had a relationship with, that indeed there was child pornography hidden in his van. So, yeah, it looks like he was, and it's, a sad state of affairs. And, I'll be talking about David Burgess. He wound up controlling the trademark for a while, and him and I had a run in. It wasn't like a physical or a real aggressive run in, but the trademark got signed over to 20th Century Fox through some paperwork that should have never happened. But that's a whole different story. I'll talk about that in the future. All right, next one.
Tool Times writes, any Hal Robinson stories?
Well, Hal Robinson was a artist at the Easy Rider magazine. He was responsible for Miraculous Mother and a few of these other characters that came through the pages of Easy Rider. What was he like? I'll tell you what he was like. He was like Von Dutch, Andy, the Ventura jeweler. He was artist, and these artists are somewhat eccentric, and you don't get to know them well, and sometimes they get lost in their own demons. Like I said, I didn't know Hal well, but he seemed very quiet and kind of esoteric crew he ran with. I never got to know him too well. I'm sure Keith Ball would probably have a better insight into what he was like. But like I said, these guys were artists and usually wind up, especially as they got older, being very eccentric. Okay, next one.
Okay, Mark Farrington, 9727. Your story is all speculation. You weren't even around when Bob was alive. I wish Sonny was here to verify George's story.
Okay, well, look, we got a crybaby. What's his name again?
Mike Farrington.
Mike Farrington. I'm going to tell you, I was around. I knew Norton Bob. I knew when he crashed. The information I got was from various members, Animal, Cisco. He wasn't the closest friend of mine. I know David Ortega spent several years in prison with him. But I did know Norton Bob, and I was around when that whole incident happened. And, it seems to me you're reading Sonny's books uh, and taking the information from Sonny's books. Now, I'm going to give you a revelation that you're probably not going to want to hear, especially if you're a Sonny fan, and there may be others out there as well that's not going to like what I have to say. But Sonny didn't write his books. Sonny had ghostwriters. And also, Sonny's lawyer, Fritz Clapp, I was told, wrote a lot of that stuff. Sonny just related it to him, and they elaborated on it. So I've never read any of Sonny's books. I picked one of Sonny's books up once, and I was reading it because Sonny and I had a beef about the cover on the book, and I wanted to go into the meeting with some substance when I confronted him. And I read a very short part of it, and I didn't feel it was something I wanted to read. It was a waste of time for me. So people don't want me to bash Sonny. Don't ask me questions about Sonny because I'm not intentionally bashing him. I'm just telling you how I perceive it and how I saw it. Did I love Sonny? I loved him sometimes, and sometimes I hated him, and I still conflicted to this day on how I really feel about him. We had a long relationship, went through a lot of stuff politically, through the outlaw world, through the indictments and searches and conflicts, not only in the club but in the legal department. So, you don't want me to talk bad about Sonny? Don't ask me about Sonny because I'm going to tell you how I feel. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, Robert Waldo. I knew Norton, fellow pilot at Lodi Skydiving. He was ferrying a plane to Australia for new owners, and the engine failed after leaving Hawaii.
Okay, I put that question in there because I thought it added some substance to what I said last week. Maybe the circumstances were different. I thought he was setting some sort of record, and that's what I was told. I knew that there was a problem with the motor, and they crashed. And like I said, Cisco went there, tracked the last known message from him, threw flowers out, and that was the end of it. I I don't think Norton even has a headstone. I think because they never found him, they never perceived him as dead. That I think their attitude was perhaps someday he could show up. Now there may be a headstone there, and I just don't remember it or have never seen it. But I've seen a lot of the headstones in there. I've been to that cemetery several times and attended several funerals there. So I hope that ends the Norton Bob saga. I want to talk about Guy Castellone, the San Diego president. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to 1977, September 5th. And he was not the president then, he was the vice president. Thomas Crunch Renzulli was the president. But I want to get into what happened the end of the summer of 77. And the actions of the small handful of men would change the dynamics of the outlaw bike world in Southern California with the street war that went on between the Hells Angels and the Mongols. And this ultimately would affect clubs worldwide. The battle rages on, the war rages on, the attitudes come and go against each other. But, law enforcement always said, this is about the California rocker. Well, it really wasn't. There was a lot of small incidents that led up to the shooting. And, there was a member from Richmond named Chester Green, who he testified against some Richmond members. Other members as well. Chester was a Hells Angel. Other members as well, Whispering Bill, and I can't remember who else testified against some Richmond members. They went in the witness protection program. Chester Green moved to Southern California and joined the Mongols, and he lied to the Mongols. And he told them he was out in good standing. He not only lied to the Mongols, he lied to the outlaws. Taco and I had several conversations about Chester Green. Uh, his brother was in a relationship with a Hells Angels ex-wife, and all these things, including the fight at the swap meet, would lead up to a problem. The ultimate problem came when Ray and who was the new Los Angeles Hells Angel president, old man John stepped down. Ray took over. Montevilla from the Mongols took over. I don't know how long his tenure was. I was told there were periods of time I thought that maybe Montevilla was a fictional name. And they said, no, there was a guy named Montevilla. He was in charge. And he really kind of walked circles around Ray as far as his street smarts. He was a lot smarter street guy than Ray Glore. And ultimately, they kept saying, we're going to go to the California Rocker. Ray didn't handle it properly. If Ray would have been a different or better leader, maybe the Mongols would have decided to go with something different, but they didn't. And, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And once that started, it appeared to be no turning back. And what really kicked it off, there was a pack of Mongols coming back from Kern River. They were coming back into San Diego, and there was a 5-man team put together, and there were 3 people in the car and 2 people on the street. And I'll break it down for you. They were ultimately all charged with racketeering and conspiracy. In the car was Guy Castellone, a gentleman named Brad Eaton, he was driving, and a guy named Larry Gaskins Skeeter. Guy confirmed that Brad Eaton was driving the car. He never told me Larry Gaskins was in it, and I never talked to Larry Gaskins about it, so that could be incorrect. But you had Obi Dave up at Kern River. He had the Mongols under surveillance. He followed them back. He stopped, made a call to Crunch, said the Mongols are coming down this way at this time. I estimate they'll be there. And the car was waiting for him. And they ultimately were all indicted. Barry Tarlow and Mark Haney represented them. And what happened was the shooter crew was waiting in a rest stop, and they were communicating either by payphones or perhaps even walkie-talkies. This is before cell phones. And when the Mongol pack passed by, they were waiting there. When the Mongol passed back by, the car was soon in pursuit. And I had long conversations with Guy about this. And the shooters were equipped with an AR-15 and a World War II vintage Russian machine gun. They said they were in pursuit of these guys, and took them a while to catch them. They said that the car was going up and down these little knolls, and they would lose sight of the Mongol pack when they were in the bottom part of the knoll, and then when they would come to the rise, they'd see the pack again. And Guy described that the pack got closer and closer and closer each time they'd hit the top of one of these little knolls. And, they were shot, Jingles and Redbeard, that both died. The car was driven by Brett Eaton, and it was taken to Los Angeles, to Laco, and it was cut up at a wrecking yard. Inside the car, it was peppered with empty cartridges, and the 2 machine guns were in the trunk. And later, we would find out that Ray snuck the weapons out of the trunk, and that wound up being a problem for Ray. But the next bombing was at a funeral, and the feds conveniently never identified who the bomber actually was. And the bomber was Brad Eaton. And Brad Eaton had become their informant, and they decided they didn't want to identify him as the guy that drove that bomb in to the Mongols' funeral home. They were trying to clean their informant up. But I myself at the Hell's Angel Clubhouse in Los Angeles, I got a call from San Sarantino. He was the LA underboss of the mafia at that time, and all he said to me was, "Really, George?" At a funeral. So we had a lot of people upset. People in the bike world were mad about it. People in the underworld were mad about it, and just everything escalated after that. Ray took over the leadership. Like I mentioned earlier, the frame up bike shop got blown up. And, people ask me all the time, George, you ever have any regrets? And if I were to say I have any regrets, I would say, yeah, it's that I didn't have the ability to stop the bombing at the frame up. I was a young member, I wasn't in a position of power yet. A few months later, I would become vice president of the club, and maybe if the circumstances and the envelope of time were different, I would have had the balls to tell these guys, stand down. I'm not going to let you do that. But you asked me about my regret. That's my regret. That 15-year-old kid getting blown up. But you know, people might ask, well, why is Guy talking to you? And what you have to understand is anybody that's been to prison knows how close you can become with another prisoner. And Guy was not only another prisoner with me at Terminal Island in Long Beach, we were brothers together. And, Guy and I developed a really strong bond. We had a lot of time by ourselves down there. He explained a lot of things that I haven't talked about yet that happened in Dago. Uh, Guy backed me for life, even after my status was changed in the club, and Sonny was making those accusations that I was an informant. Guy stood up for me at the meetings, took a lot of flack for it, said it was all bullshit, and that's because Guy and I shared a lot of secrets, and he knew that I was sitting on a lot of information, and if I had indeed been an informant, I probably never would have spent a day in jail, and I could have had anything I wanted. That's not the route I wanted to go. I like being who I am. I don't like the fact that there are Hell's Angels that make cavalier statements about me being an informant and giving them, testifying in court. None of that stuff ever happened. If it did, there'd be records of it around, and I think you viewers out there are smart enough to know that. So as the weeks progress and the months progress, I'm going to talk about other things with Guy Castellone. I've got a lot of other stories about him and I, how we wound up with that 4,000 pounds of dynamite, members that left abruptly over the years. Guy was a really funny guy. Guy was a real serious guy, but he also had a real dark sense of humor about him. And I want to share that with you in the future. He was a hell of a guy. So that's it for this week. Please like and subscribe and comment. I'll try to get to all your comments, over the coming weeks. If you don't like the commercials, you can always go to Patreon. It's $4.99 a month, and you don't have to put up with the commercials. But continue to follow us, and anything you got on your mind, write in the latest episode, and I'll try to address it for you in the comments. Okay? Thanks a lot. Take care.